Hey guys, what's up? Getting ready to do our live video here. It's going to be a little different tonight. We're kind of having fun with our drinks and our records. So I'm kind of doing something that's been known as the worst liquor ever. And I'm also going to feature one of the worst records ever. And it's had some label changes over the years. We're going to talk about some different records too that have had some label changes and things like that for our vinyl video tonight. So it's going to be a fun one, really changing it up. I've got a lot of bands from all eras here kind of that we're going to be talking about. So it'll be a fun one. Again, if you're watching this live right now, give us a thumbs up and just write, L for live. And if you're watching a repeat, just write R, leave a comment so we know you're watching on repeat. And any other comments or questions you have, kind of drop them along the way. Lauren's here manning the cameras right now. She's going to be checking that stuff out for us too. Well, we'd love to hear what you have to say though about our video. So we're going to jump right into it. So welcome to Vinyl Happy Hour, guys. I'm Skylar from Culture Shock Clothing and Records here in Rockford, Illinois. And we feature so many different records in our store. Every Friday there's new releases that are coming out. Plus we're adding to our used record section. And there's so many different types of bands and genres and different record labels putting out new albums and reissues. So we kind of want to dive a little deeper into some of those every Thursday night for our Vinyl Happy Hour, so you don't have so much frustration while you're shopping and trying to browse through records. So every Thursday night, join us for a drink for our Vinyl Happy Hour, and we'll discuss at least 5 different records and feature a different drink. Usually I'm more of a sipper, something a little smoother like a bourbon. But I have this. This was another gift, a gifted liquor from our friend Bill Tucker in Chicago. He brought this to me a couple years ago. It's Malort. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's an exclusively Chicago area drink, so it's harder to find in other areas of the country. The story of the liquor is though, during Prohibition era, many years ago, there was this Swedish immigrant named Carl Jeppson. This is Carl Jeppson's drink. And he had some sort of a home brew going on, or special blend liquor, and he bypassed some of the liquor laws by selling it as a medicinal drink, and had kept it going for years and years, and it actually caught into some popularity. And it's made with a wormwood, which is kind of the bitter element that makes, I think, like Jägermeister and some other drinks. Oh no, absinthe. That's what goes into. So if you've ever had that or smelled that even, you'll know kind of that bitter aroma that comes out of it, and the drink is just as strong as you would think. It's kind of jokingly referred to as one of the worst liquors ever, but it's also, strangely enough, a popular drink amongst bartenders and connoisseurs, and I'm sure some hipsters and other people too. But the first time I tasted it, it was very brutal to sip through, but now that I've tried some more liquors and gotten used to it, I was able to drink it. It's considered more of a shot drink, probably not a sip. I'm going to start with just a mini shot though. And I actually do. I taste some other flavors though in it too. There's even a little woodsy flavor. It's made with a potato grain. The older labeling, the older packaging of this said it's a very stiff drink and not many people will be able to handle it. It even said only 1 in 49 people, a very odd number to come up with, said they would choose to drink this. But it said if you hang in there through the first shot, by the second or third shot, it could be your favorite liquor. They're right about that. So he's passed away, but it is still being bottled and sold as a Chicago company liquor. It's the only one and only of its kind around the world. So it's definitely worth checking out. But to go with our theme of really bad liquors, I'm going to jump off. Instead of ending with a holy grail, I want to start with one. This band, the Shaggs, is... it's considered a holy grail, but it's also considered one of the worst records ever. The story is, it's 3 teenage daughters from the New Hampshire area in 1969 were playing some instruments and playing around, and their father wanted them to make a rock band and paid for them to go into a studio and paid for the private pressing of this album. It's considered a horrible album. Many people who've heard it agree that it's horrible. There's no harmony to it. The beat there's no beat or rhythm. They just kind of clunked along on their instruments and sang very off-key. But what's quaint about it is that a lot of people have picked up on it as a really interesting album. It's been a favorite album amongst bigger people, even like Frank Zappa, Kurt Cobain, Sonic Youth, the Moldy Peaches. But it's kind of one of those holy grails that you wonder why it's worth so much money. Because it doesn't seem to be a great album. There wasn't any demand for it when it came out. The little record label was on only made 1,000 copies, and they folded up, went out of business. And rumor is that 900 albums went missing out of the 1,000 records pressed, so there was only 100 of them available. And this is a second press. The Holy Grail first pressing is still out there for me to find, hopefully. This is the 1980 reissue from Rounder Records. Even this is worth about $100 or more. But the first pressing, I just happened to look it up just to see, a sealed copy just sold for $5,000. So it is crazy the price that people will pay for a rare or original record. Even if it's not well known or really not that great of an album. I do remember hearing the song It's Halloween was played during Halloween on Dr. Demento's novelty radio show years ago. I never really knew the story though about the girls or about the album. But it's a fun, weird little album, and it even reminds me of some of those early kind of Seattle area punk grunge bands that were trying things out. What is that one band? Even Beck, I could say, has some albums that are kind of weird and sound odd. So it's one of those ones, just check it out if you want to hear more of what it's about. This next band I want to talk about is a band called Silver Apples. It's a band that even I overlooked a later album because I was a fan of their first albums. This is their first one from 1967, 1968, I think, Contact. This is a beautiful repressing from Jackpot Records. They did a reissue of their first album on like some sky blue vinyl. Silver Apples is a strange band though. It's a two-piece band, and Simeon, or whatever, yeah, Simeon, the vocalist, has this crazy oscillating machine where there's a bunch of like electronic oscillators and devices that make noises, blips and beeps. And he has a whole bunch of controls that he controls with his hands, his hips, his feet. And just strange music. It was way ahead of its time almost. Maybe, you know, even earlier dance music and other, you know, indie rock music kind of replicated this later on. But it's a 60s thing. And their second album, Contact, shows them behind the cockpit of a Pan Am American airplane, and there's a crash on the back where they're sitting in the debris. Well, they received a big lawsuit from this because of it, and they disbanded. They owed so much money that they just closed out their band name and went their own ways and started real jobs, I guess, because they couldn't pay the lawsuit. But this is the repress of the 60s albums. But they went years and years without making music, and then got back together, kind of, or did another album in '97. This one is Beacon. It turns out I love this album. I had never listened to it until just recently. We had it down in the store at Culture Shock, and I decided, hey, it's time to check this album out. Almost 30 years later, they got back together and started making music. What's really cool about this one is it was recorded by Steve Albini, who is well known from bands like Big Black and things like that, and he's recorded Nirvana and all those other bands too. A lot of more noisy bands too. But this one's actually really kind of polished sounding, a lot of really cool beats, a lot of weird electronics. The vocals are almost kind of like poet spoken word, a little odd, but definitely go with the music. It's just one of those ones where it's a band I was really into and I didn't even know sitting in my own store was one of their later albums that I actually really liked a lot. So it just pays to dig a little bit. Again, keep your comments coming if you want. I want to talk to you about some of these other things that are coming out here. If you're watching this on repeat, just leave an R. If you're watching it live, just write hi in the comments below. I have another one that just a reissue that came out from an album that just came out a few months ago from Imperfect Circle. We probably know James Maynard Keating from his projects with Tool and with Pucifer. Kind of, you know, this is more of a kind of just goth rock, industrial rock, 90s band. Amazing, one of my favorite bands also. Pucifer is a little more of his ego and side project, super group project of some different music. This is his first album with Perfect Circle in I think 14 or 15 years. The cover art led me to believe, I'm not sure if I'm going to like this album because it's a little different, but it's a cool gatefold. They just put it out on black vinyl and white vinyl, and now we got a red and blue version of it, so I'm not sure if this is their... I thought maybe at first it was like a strange patriotic release for them, maybe being anti-patriotic or something, but it does go with the artwork with the octopus on there for Eat the Elephant. They're red and blue, so maybe that's all it is. But this album is a little mellower. It's still a very kind of heavier rock album, but there's a lot of piano, a lot more kind of gloomier lyrics and gloomier sounds to it. But I think it's a great comeback album for Perfect Circle after so many years of not playing together. I'm really interested to see if he's going to do any more Tool albums. And I do range all over in types of music I'm into. We have many genres of music here in our store. Another one is a really great kind of a downer folk bluegrass artist, John Prine. This is his first album from '71. Definitely along the lines of like Bob Dylan or some things like that. He was discovered by Chris Christopherson in the Chicago folk scene. This first album, though, definitely has themes of, you know, war problems, things going on in Vietnam, a lot of drug problems, thoughts of death and other things too. But it's a really great album, great music. Some of the best albums are sometimes the most downer albums. Well, he is still going. 2018, he has a new album out, Tree of Forgiveness. Quite a few years ago, he had some kind of a cancer on his throat, had a major surgery done. It was very, you know, dangerous. And it changed his voice and his vocal cords. He had a lot of problems. His voice sounds great as it ever has, though, and it's a lot more gravelly and lower. So John Prine, somehow he gets a little overlooked. I mean, he's as infamous as many other big folk artists. And this one is actually, he started his own record label about 20 years ago. This is on Oh Boy Records. It's a little more stripped down, a little more acoustic, but definitely worth checking out. Great to hear an old artist still putting out some new tunes. Next thing we want to jump into is an album everybody knows, I'm sure, Guns N' Roses. Appetite for Destruction opened up to be one of the biggest selling albums ever. Of course, Welcome to the Jungle and Sweet Child of Mine, Paradise City. I mean, there's just tons of hits on this album. Most people only know it for this cover, though, with the Iron Cross thing with the guys on it. But there's just a new special edition that came out. They call it the Halogroove edition, and I'll show you why. That comes with a foil slipcover. But the slipcover comes off and reveals the original artwork that was actually on the original album. And it's this really kind of strange and graphic. It's kind of like this robotic rape scene or whatever going on with this toxic Avenger, not toxic Avenger, but like this Death Avenger coming down to get rid of this, you know, evildoer. But it's pretty graphic, and a lot of stores didn't sell it. It was just too graphic what was going on. So immediately got pulled and put with this album cover, because so many stores, especially department stores, didn't want that. No matter what the message was, good or bad, they just didn't want that artwork. And that artwork is, Mike, who was that again? Billy?
Robert Williams.
Oh yeah, Robert Williams. Yeah, Robert Williams, who's also part of Juxtapoz magazine, great artist. But what's really cool about this, besides restoring the original artwork to the album cover, is it's an expanded edition. We've got some new artwork, and it's fully remastered for the first time ever on vinyl. Really great audiophile sound. And one of the records here, yeah, the D side has a holograph on it. So I don't think we'll catch that on camera, but it's got a Guns N' Roses logo that when it spins, you can see it as like a little hologram appearing. So that's cool. The other really cool thing about it being expanded is that the original one was a two-sided record, just side A and side B, which they actually called side G and side R. But on the expanded edition, you get side G, side N, and side R for Guns N' Roses, because it wouldn't fit on a single LP. So I'm kind of glad that they did it that way instead of spreading it out on 4 sides, because you get more music per side. But really cool that it has that slipcover artwork with it. The next one is another one where the label was changed. I'm sure everyone has seen this, Guns N' Roses. The Mamas and Papas first album, that was also Guns N' Roses' first album too. So I don't think anybody knew how big they were going to be. And when their radio single started blowing up, they were like, we've got to get some new artwork out right away so we can sell this album in every store. Same thing kind of happened with Mamas and Papas many years before. I think '66, their first album came out. This is the one with California Dreamin', Monday, Monday. And down here, the first pressings of this have the toilet exposed. And that was a big no-no, I guess, in the 60s because it was considered indecent. And the original, unfortunately, I don't have that Holy Grail to show you. I'm still hunting for that Holy Grail. It's out there. It's pretty rare, and it usually sells for about $300. But Sundazed Records here, for this Friday, has done a special release of it, restoring the original artwork with the toilet. Evidently, that was considered very indecent, even though there's many things much more indecent in the 60s, and stores were pulling it or wouldn't sell it. So they put the big hit songs on a little scroll to cover up the toilet. And what's funny is even on the Sundazed reissue, they've got the info about the release in the same spot covering the toilet. But that's the full artwork. And what's funny is this is on a yellow vinyl. I'm not sure if that has anything to do with the toilet, but it's kind of odd that they chose that color to do the reissue on. So Sundazed is also really well known for reissuing a lot of rare 60s pieces and things like that. I just want to show off, because of the cover art, so cool. Another Mamas and Papas album. This was a fun, special fun jacket edition. We can exchange faces with the Mamas and the Papas and show off some different ace covers. That's another one of their later albums. So yeah. And then I just have one more little add-on, since we don't feature tons of 45s. I have a copy, an older Eleanor Rigby and Yellow Submarine Beatles one. Well, tomorrow coming out an import picture disc of Yellow Submarine backed with Eleanor Rigby. It's just a cool little 45 picture disc with the Yellow Submarine and the cartoon cast on it. So yeah, that's really cool. So that's our episode 6. I think we've squeezed in about 6 or so records and a few other extras to kind of go along with everything. So if you like what you're seeing, please send us some comments. Let us know what's up. You can check out our store at Culture Shock here in Rockford, Illinois. We're at 2239 Charles Street. We're open every day, every single Friday. We bring in new releases and used records. Obviously, we're big music geeks, and we like to get really deep into what we have. Yeah, and every Thursday we're doing, I think around 8 o'clock, we're going to try to stick with the time for our vinyl happy hour. So you can join us for a drink and talk about some albums, show off some artwork, and talk about some upcoming releases and some old holy grails. So again, thanks so much for watching. I'm going to down the rest of this Malort liquor, and next week I'm going back to bourbon though, I think. Thanks so much, guys.